Harry Aleman, a name synonymous with organized crime, violence, and a justice system pushed to its limits. This is the story of a feared enforcer whose rise to infamy and eventual fall shook Chicago to its core. From his humble beginnings to his unflinching loyalty to the Chicago outfit, Aleman's life was a chilling testament to the power of corruption and the fight to overcome it.
Harry Aleman, a name that echoes infamy in the annals of organized crime, was born on January 19, 1939, in Chicago, Illinois. Raised in a modest family with ties to Italian-American and Mexican-American heritage, Aleman's early life was a blend of cultural influences. His father, a Sicilian immigrant, worked as a laborer, while his mother maintained their household, growing up in the rough-and-tumble streets of Chicago's near West Side. Young Harry was exposed to the realities of urban poverty and crime at an early age. By his teenage years, he had already begun his foray into petty criminal activities, displaying a proclivity for violence and a sharp mind for manipulation. Harry's formative years were heavily influenced by the mob-dominant environment of mid-20th century Chicago. The allure of quick money and power proved irresistible, and he soon began associating with local street gangs. By the late 1950s, Aleman had caught the attention of the Chicago outfit, one of the most powerful organized crime syndicates in the United States. His ruthless efficiency and unflinching loyalty earned him a position within the outfit, marking the start of his notorious career. In the 1970s, Aleman rose to prominence as a feared enforcer for the outfit. His reputation was built on a chilling skill set: extortion, loan sharking, and, most infamously, contract killings. Among his earliest confirmed victims was William Logan, a union steward who dared to cross the outfit. Logan's death in 1972 was emblematic of Aleman's modus operandi: swift, brutal, and meticulously planned. Witnesses described a masked gunman who left the scene with cold precision, and rumors quickly swirled that Aleman was responsible. Aleman's list of alleged victims grew over the years, though his involvement was often shrouded in fear and silence. Authorities suspected him in dozens of murders, many linked to the outfit's efforts to maintain control over Chicago's lucrative illegal operations. His victims were not just rivals but also individuals who posed a threat to the mob's interests. This included informants, uncooperative business owners, and even members of law enforcement who dared to challenge the outfit's influence. What set Aleman apart was his chilling demeanor. He carried out his work with an unsettling calmness, earning him the nickname "the man with no nerves." This reputation for fearlessness extended beyond his victims. It intimidated witnesses and even members of the criminal underworld. The mere mention of his name was enough to silence potential informants, complicating law enforcement's efforts to gather evidence against him. Despite his infamy, Aleman's personal motivations remained enigmatic. Some speculated that he was driven by a quest for power and respect within the outfit, while others believed he derived satisfaction from the act of killing itself. His loyalty to the mob, however, was never in question. Aleman viewed himself as a soldier in a larger organization, adhering to its code of silence and unwavering allegiance. His involvement in the outfit's operations extended beyond Chicago. Aleman's activities were tied to the syndicate's nationwide network, including partnerships with other crime families in New York and Las Vegas. His ability to adapt to different environments and maintain secrecy made him a valuable asset to the outfit. One of the most shocking aspects of Aleman's career was his ability to evade justice. Despite being linked to numerous crimes, he avoided prosecution for decades. This was partly due to the pervasive corruption within the justice system during that era. Law enforcement officials and judges were often compromised, allowing figures like Aleman to operate with impunity. Aleman's personal life was equally enigmatic. Married with children, he maintained a facade of normalcy that belied his violent career. Those close to him described him as a devoted family man, a stark contrast to the fearsome image he projected in the underworld. This duality added to the mystique surrounding his persona. As Aleman's reputation grew, So did the pressure from law enforcement. The federal government launched multiple investigations into the Chicago outfit, targeting its key members. Aleman's name frequently surfaced in these inquiries, but concrete evidence remained elusive. Witnesses were too afraid to testify, and the outfit's code of silence ensured that internal information rarely leaked. By the early 1970s, Aleman had become one of the most feared enforcers in the country. His influence within the outfit was unmatched, and his ability to intimidate rivals and law enforcement alike made him virtually untouchable. However, his reign was not without challenges. Internal power struggles within the outfit occasionally put him at odds with other members, though his loyalty to the organization remained steadfast. The 1970s saw increasing scrutiny from federal and local authorities as law enforcement intensified its efforts to dismantle organized crime in Chicago. Aleman's name frequently surfaced in investigations, but securing a conviction proved elusive. Witnesses were either too afraid to testify or mysteriously disappeared, and juries often acquitted him due to lack of evidence. However, his luck began to run out in 1975, when he was charged with the murder of William Logan. Aleman's trial for Logan's murder became a landmark case in the annals of American criminal justice. Prosecutors were determined to make an example of him, but their efforts were hindered by a corrupt judicial system. The presiding judge, Frank Wilson, was later revealed to have been bribed by the outfit to ensure Aleman's acquittal. In 1977, Aleman walked free, further cementing his reputation as untouchable. The tainted trial prompted widespread outrage and led to significant reforms aimed at combating judicial corruption. For Aleman, however, the respite was temporary. In the 1990s, advances in forensic science and a renewed focus on cold cases reopened the investigation into Logan's murder. With new evidence and the support of witnesses willing to break their silence, prosecutors charged Aleman once more. This time the outcome was different. In 1997, Aleman was convicted of Logan's murder in a retrial, marking a historic moment in the fight against organized crime. It was the first time in U.S. history that a defendant was retried for murder after an acquittal, a feat made possible by the argument that the original trial was invalid due to judicial bribery. Aleman's conviction signaled the end of his reign of terror. Sentenced to life in prison, he spent his remaining years behind bars, a shadow of the once feared enforcer. His downfall was a testament to the resilience of justice in the face of corruption and fear, and his story remains a cautionary tale about the destructive power of organized crime. Life in prison was a stark contrast to the power Aleman once wielded. Isolated from his former allies and stripped of his influence, he reportedly reflected on his choices, though he maintained a stoic silence about his crimes. His incarceration marked a turning point for law enforcement's efforts to tackle organized crime, inspiring further investigations and prosecutions. The retrial and conviction of Aleman were celebrated as a victory for the justice system. It highlighted the importance of persistence in the face of corruption and underscored the need for systemic reforms. For the victims' families, the verdict brought a sense of closure, though the scars of Aleman's actions lingered. Aleman's downfall also served as a cautionary tale within the criminal underworld. His conviction demonstrated that even the most feared figures could be brought to justice, sending a powerful message to others involved in organized crime. It disrupted the perception of invincibility that many mobsters relied upon to maintain control. The case against Aleman also shed light on the broader network of corruption that had enabled organized crime to thrive. The exposure of compromised officials and systemic weaknesses spurred significant changes in law enforcement strategies. Task forces were created to specifically target organized crime, and public awareness campaigns emphasized the importance of cooperation with authorities. Despite the legal victories, Aleman's legacy remained a dark chapter in Chicago's history. His actions left a trail of devastation, and the fear he instilled in communities lingered long after his imprisonment. For many, His story symbolized the destructive impact of unchecked power and the enduring struggle to uphold justice. In his final years, Aleman's health declined, and he passed away in 2010 while still incarcerated. His death marked the end of an era for the Chicago outfit, but the lessons from his life and crimes continued to resonate. The reforms inspired by his case paved the way for a more robust justice system, though the fight against organized crime remains ongoing. Aleman's story serves as a reminder of the complex interplay between power, corruption, and justice. His rise and fall encapsulate the challenges faced by law enforcement and the resilience required to overcome them. For those who study his life, Aleman remains a figure of both infamy and historical significance, a symbol of the enduring battle against organized crime.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep into the world of the Chicago outfit and one of their most notorious hitmen, Harry Aleman. Get ready. This one's a wild ride.
Yeah, the outfit's impact, can't be overstated. They were a force to be reckoned with, a dark reflection of American corporate, power, with this grip on the city that lasted for decades.
Yeah, they definitely weren't playing around. And Harry Aleman, born in 1939, was a product of this very environment. Our sources paint this picture of Chicago in the 30s and 50s, this city where poverty and violence were just rampant, and the outfit was everywhere.
His background, it's interesting. Aleman came from a family with both Italian-American and Mexican-American roots.
Wow.
Growing up in a neighborhood where the outfit was practically woven into life. Imagine seeing this kind of illicit power as a kid. It must have felt like a twisted version of the American dream.
Right. A recipe for, you can kind of see how things would head in a certain direction.
Right.
The sources mentioned him getting involved in petty crime early on, but there's something about his rise within the outfit that's so fascinating. He wasn't just another thug. He became one of their top enforcers.
He was ruthlessly efficient, fiercely loyal to the outfit, and just gifted, I guess you could say, when it came to violence. He orchestrated these hits with chilling meticulousness.
It's scary.
It really is.
The sources talk about this one case in particular, the 1972 murder of William Logan, a Union steward who dared to cross the outfit. Brutal hit, carried out by a masked gunman, and immediately everyone's pointing at Aleman. But as with, many outfit crimes, concrete proof was elusive.
The code of silence. It was their most powerful weapon. They instilled fear in anyone who even thought about speaking out.
It's like something out of a mob movie, but way worse. Speaking of chilling, there's that nickname, the man with no nerves. That's more than just a name, right?
Right. It was a tool. Imagine the impact on witnesses, on rivals, even on his own crew. This reputation, unflappable, totally devoid of fear. It was a weapon.
Makes you wonder how he managed to operate for decades with basically total impunity. We're talking multiple suspected hits. The sources say he seemed untouchable. Was the justice system in Chicago really that corrupt?
It was a perfect storm of corruption. You had officials on the outfit's payroll, widespread fear of reprisal, and a culture of silence that was basically impossible to crack. The outfit didn't just target their enemies. They went after anyone who posed a threat. Witnesses, informants, even law enforcement.
Wow. The sources detail this one trial in 1975, the William Logan case. Prosecutors had what seemed like a strong case, but the judge, Frank Wilson, who was later found to be corrupt, made sure Aleman walked free.
That trial, it was a catalyst for change. The level of corruption, the way it was just flaunted, ignited public outrage, and it led to some crucial reforms aimed at combating judicial corruption.
Incredible. But the story, it doesn't end there, right? The sources go on to describe Aleman's eventual retrial in the 90s, this landmark case. That really shook things up.
Yeah, it marked the first time in U.S. history that a defendant was retried for murder after an acquittal based on a bribed judge. Aleman's conviction sent shockwaves through the system.
Like the system, finally correcting itself, even if it took decades. But this retrial and its implications raises this fascinating question. How did the prosecution finally manage to secure a conviction after all that time?
So you had witnesses, who were finally ready to break the code of silence. Decades had passed, and some felt safe enough to come forward, their fear finally outweighed by a desire for justice.
Must have taken immense courage.
Oh, absolutely. And there was another element at play: forensic technology. It had advanced significantly since the first trial. New techniques allowed investigators to re-examine old evidence, uncovering details that were previously hidden.
Like the past was finally catching up with Aleman. But I have to admit, I'm still struggling to grasp the psychology of a hitman. What makes someone capable of such calculated violence? Was there something inherently different about Aleman?
It's a complex question. Some experts believe that certain personality traits, like a lack of empathy or a high tolerance for risk, can predispose individuals to violence.
So are we talking nature or nurture here? Were these guys born this way, or did their environment shape them?
Probably a combination of both. While some individuals may have a genetic predisposition towards aggression, their upbringing and social context also play a crucial role. In Aleman's case, growing up surrounded by poverty and witnessing the outfit's influence undoubtedly shaped his trajectory.
The sources describe him as almost robotic in his efficiency, completely dedicated to the outfit's goals. Was it purely about power, or did he derive some kind of twisted satisfaction from his actions?
It's tough to say. He maintained this stoic silence about his past. Even in prison, perhaps he compartmentalized, separating his personal life from his criminal activities. Or maybe he fully embraced the persona of the ruthless enforcer, burying any feelings of guilt or remorse.
It's a chilling thought. The sources also mention that he had a family, a wife and kids. It's hard to reconcile that image of a devoted family man with the cold-blooded killer he was.
It's a stark contrast. Those who knew him, outside of his mob life, described him as a loving husband and father. It speaks to the level of compartmentalization these individuals had to maintain. This double life, this facade of normalcy.
What duality must have taken a toll on him.
Yeah.
And on those around him. What about the impact of his actions on Chicago itself? Did his reign of terror leave a lasting mark on the city?
Aleman's legacy. It's complex. On one hand, his crimes instilled fear in communities, leaving a sense of unease that lingered for years. But on the other hand, his downfall, particularly the landmark retrial, brought a wave of reforms and renewed efforts to combat organized crime.
Like his case served as a wake-up call.
Yeah, exposing the vulnerabilities of the system and the need for change.
But even with Aleman behind bars, the outfit's grip on the city was still strong, right? They weren't going to simply disappear overnight. What were the lasting effects of their influence on Chicago?
It went far beyond the violence and intimidation. They had infiltrated various sectors of society, from labor unions to politics. This web of corruption eroded public trust and left a scar on the city's fabric.
So how did Chicago begin to heal from this? Was it simply a matter of time? Or did it require more proactive efforts to dismantle the outfit's power structure?
It was a combination of factors. Law enforcement agencies developed new strategies to target organized crime, focusing on disrupting their financial networks and infiltrating their ranks. But just as importantly, a cultural shift was taking place.
What do you mean by that?
People were growing tired of living in fear. The code of silence was slowly cracking as more individuals found the courage to speak out against the outfit. There was a growing sense that Chicago deserved better, that the city could reclaim its future from the grip of organized crime.
That's inspiring. A testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppression. But the story of the Chicago outfit, with its deep roots and pervasive influence, reminds us that this struggle is far from over.
Oh, absolutely. Organized crime, it's a shape-shifting beast, constantly adapting to new opportunities, exploiting vulnerabilities. While the traditional power structures may have weakened, the underlying conditions that allow them to flourish, poverty, inequality, corruption, they still persist.
It's a sobering reminder that we can't afford to be complacent. The fight against organized crime requires constant vigilance and a commitment to addressing the root causes that allow it to thrive.
You got it. Aleman's story. It's not just a historical account, it's a cautionary tale. It reminds us that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing process, requiring a collective effort to dismantle the systems that allow organized crime to flourish.
And it highlights the importance of individual courage, of those who dared to break the code of silence and speak truth to power.
Precisely. Their actions paved the way for change, proving that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, the fight for justice can prevail.
Aleman's story is a dark chapter in Chicago's history, but it also illuminates a path towards a brighter future, A future where communities are empowered, justice is upheld, and the grip of organized crime is loosened.
And I think that's a powerful message to carry forward as we continue to explore the complexities of organized crime and its impact on society.
Well said. So Aleman dies in prison in 2010. His reign of terror is over. But the questions surrounding his life and his legacy linger. What can we learn from his story, from the rise and fall of a notorious hitman?
His story serves as a stark reminder of the human capacity for both good and evil, for violence and redemption.
It's a reminder that the battle against organized crime, it isn't just about taking down kingpins or disrupting criminal enterprises. It's about addressing the underlying societal issues that create fertile ground for these organizations to take root.
You're absolutely right. It's about fostering a culture of accountability, transparency, and justice, where individuals feel empowered to speak out against corruption and demand a better future for their communities.
And it's about remembering those who fought for that better future, those who risked their lives, to expose the truth and challenge the grip of organized crime.
Their bravery serves as an inspiration, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, hope for change persists.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive into the life and crimes of Harry Aleman. But before we wrap things up, there's one more aspect of his story that I think is worth exploring: the lasting impact of his actions on those who are closest to him, his family. It's one thing to read about, the violence and the intimidation, but to think about the families, caught in the crossfire, just adds this whole other layer of tragedy to this story.
It's a side of organized crime that I think often gets overlooked. The impact on innocent family members, the wives, the children, they're the ones who end up living with the consequences of choices they didn't make.
Right. The sources mention Aleman's family, but they don't go into much detail. What can you tell us about their experience? How did they navigate this double life, this dark secret at the heart of their family?
Just imagine the emotional toll, living with that constant fear of reprisal, knowing that your loved one is responsible for these unimaginable acts. It's a burden no family should have to bear.
It's a lot. Did Aleman's family ever speak publicly about their experience? Did they share any insights into his character, into the man behind the mask of the hitman?
They mostly stayed private, which is understandable. But there are little glimpses in the sources, anecdotes from people who knew the family, that paint this picture of a man trying to reconcile his two worlds.
It's so fascinating, this idea of compartmentalization, the ability to separate the personal from the professional, even when the profession is brutality.
Right. It makes you wonder about the psychology of it all. Were they just masters of deception, or did they truly believe they could keep these worlds separate?
I mean, it raises these big questions about the nature of evil, right? Can someone be capable of such horrific acts and still be a loving father, a devoted husband?
It's a question that I think philosophers have been grappling with for centuries. And I don't know if we'll ever have a definitive answer. But exploring these complexities, I think that's crucial to understanding the motivations and justifications of those involved in organized crime.
So Aleman dies in prison in 2010. What's the final takeaway here from his life and crimes? Is it a story of justice prevailing, or a cautionary tale about the enduring power of organized crime?
I think it's both. On the one hand, you have his conviction and the dismantling of much of the Chicago outfit. It demonstrates the resilience of the justice system, but it's also a reminder that the fight against organized crime is never truly over. Their methods may evolve, but the core motivations, power, greed, control, they're always there.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't afford to turn a blind eye to the forces that breed corruption and violence.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Aleman's life serves as a warning, a reminder that the pursuit of justice requires constant vigilance, a commitment to transparency and accountability, and the courage to speak truth to power.
And the courage to speak truth to power. Well said. This deep dive has taken us from the streets of 1950s Chicago to the halls of justice, from the mind of a hitman to the families who dared to stand against him.
A story of power and corruption, violence and fear, but also resilience, justice, and the hope for a better tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Chicago outfit. We'll be back soon with another deep dive, but until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth wherever it may lead.